She walked into every room like she owned it. Designer clothes, perfect hair, a voice dripping with entitlement. And America fell in love with her. For 6 seasons, Karyn Parsons played Hilary Banks on one of the most beloved sitcoms ever made. She was funny without trying to be, glamorous without effort. And she made you love a character you probably should have hated. Then, she was just gone. No dramatic exit, no scandalous headlines, no public meltdown. She didn't get cancelled. She didn't disappear into addiction. She just left. Quietly. Deliberately. And for years, most people had no idea why. Today, we're telling that story. Because what Karyn Parsons did after Hollywood is honestly more interesting than anything Hollywood ever gave her. Let's start at the beginning. Karyn Parsons was born on October 8, 1966, in Los Angeles, California. She grew up biracial. Her mother, Louise, was an African-American woman from Charleston, South Carolina, and her father, Kenneth, was of English and Welsh descent from Butte, Montana. 2 completely different worlds collided to create her, and that duality would quietly shape everything she'd later do. Her mother was a librarian. That detail matters more than it sounds. Because in that household, stories weren't just entertainment, they were a way of understanding the world. Her mom didn't just hand her books, she told her things. Real things. Hidden things. The kind of American history that doesn't make it into textbooks. Karyn grew up in Los Angeles, attended Santa Monica High School, and from a very young age, she knew she wanted to perform. She wanted to act. And she was going to go get it. She started making moves early. Auditions, small roles, the grind that every young actor in LA knows all too well. And then, everything changed. It was 1990. NBC was developing a new sitcom built around a young rapper from Philadelphia named Will Smith. The show was called The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and they needed a cast to surround him. Karyn Parsons auditioned for the role of Hilary Banks, the older cousin. Rich, pampered, self-absorbed, obsessed with fashion, fame, and herself. A character who, on paper, had no business being likable. She got the role, and she made magic with it. From the very first episode, Hilary Banks was a scene stealer. Karyn had this rare gift. She could deliver the most ridiculous, over-the-top lines and somehow make you root for the character anyway. She wasn't just playing a spoiled rich girl, she was playing a spoiled rich girl with layers, with timing, with heart hiding somewhere underneath all those designer clothes. The chemistry between the entire Banks family was electric. Alfonso Ribeiro as Carlton, James Avery, the great James Avery, as Uncle Phil, and Will Smith himself, who became one of the biggest movie stars on the planet while the show was still airing. For 6 years, from 1990 to 1996, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was a cultural institution, and Karyn Parsons was one of its pillars. The show tackled racism, death, abandonment, identity. Remember the episode where Will's father walks out on him again and Will breaks down crying in Uncle Phil's arms? That moment, one of the most emotional scenes in sitcom history, and Hilary Banks existed in that same universe. Karyn held her own through all of it. By the time the show ended in 1996, she was a household name. Here's where it gets real. When a show as massive as Fresh Prince ends, you'd think the world would be your oyster, and offers pouring in. Doors flying open. The phone never stops ringing. But the entertainment industry is cruel in a very specific way. It takes the thing that made you famous and turns it into a cage. Karyn had played Hilary Banks so brilliantly, so completely, that casting directors couldn't see past it. Every audition, every pitch, every conversation, it circled back. Could she play another spoiled socialite type? Something like Hilary, but different. She wasn't Karyn Parsons the actress, she was Hilary Banks. Full stop. That's typecasting. And it's one of Hollywood's most frustrating realities, especially for black women who already face a narrower window of opportunity in an industry that has historically not known what to do with them. She kept working. She starred in Major Payne in 1995 alongside Damon Wayans, a solid film role. She co-created, co-produced, co-wrote, and starred in her own Fox sitcom, Lush Life, in 1996. She built that show from scratch, and Fox cancelled it after just 4 episodes. 4. That stings in a way that's hard to describe. She tried again with The Job in 2001, a critically acclaimed comedy series on ABC with Dennis Leary. Good show, genuine buzz, cancelled again after 1 season. By 2002, Karyn Parsons had accomplished more than most actors ever will, and she was still fighting to be seen as something other than the character she'd already left behind. And then she met someone, and everything shifted. She married director Alexandra Rockwell in 2003, and when their daughter Lana was born, something happened inside Karyn that no audition, no callback, No sitcom role could have predicted. She became a mother, and she started asking different questions. Rockwell, her husband, grew up knowing his history, his Russian heritage, his ancestors, their accomplishments. He carried that with him as identity and strength. Karyn watched that and thought, what does my daughter get to carry? What stories does she get to hold on to? Because Karyn knew the answer. She'd heard it from her mother years ago. There are so many extraordinary Black Americans whose stories have been buried, overlooked, left out of the curriculum and the culture. Heroes without monuments, legends without legends. Innovators who changed the world and never got a single chapter in any textbook. That thought wouldn't leave her alone. And so, with the unstructured, unpredictable rhythm of Hollywood auditions making it harder and harder to be the present, intentional mother she wanted to be, Karyn Parsons made a choice. She stepped back from acting. Not forever, maybe, but she stepped back, and she leaned into something she hadn't expected to build, something that honestly would turn out to matter far more than any role she'd ever been offered. In February 2005, Karyn Parsons launched Sweet Blackberry. The seed of it came from her mother, that librarian who told stories. One story in particular had stayed with Karyn her entire life, a man named Henry Box Brown. Henry Brown was an enslaved man in Richmond, Virginia in 1848, and he did something so audacious, so brilliantly desperate that it almost doesn't feel real. He mailed himself to freedom. He had himself sealed into a wooden crate and a box and shipped from a slaveholding state to Philadelphia, a free city, across state lines, in a box. When the box was opened, Henry Brown stepped out a free man. Karyn had never seen that story in a classroom, had never seen it in a textbook, had never seen it adapted for children, and when she told it to other people, they'd stare at her with the same reaction. Why have I never heard this before? That was the answer. That was Sweet Blackberry. The first film, The Journey of Henry Box Brown, was animated, beautifully produced, and narrated by Emmy Award-winning actress Hilary Woodard. It launched in 2005 to genuine critical acclaim. Then came Garrett's Gift, the story of Garrett Morgan, the African-American inventor who created the modern traffic signal, the mechanism we use at every intersection in every city in the world. A black man built that, and most people don't know his name. That film was narrated by Queen Latifah. Then Dancing in the Light, the story of Janet Collins, the first African-American prima ballerina at the Metropolitan Opera, a woman who was offered a spot in the prestigious Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo and turned it down because they asked her to perform in whiteface. She refused, and she still made history. Then Flying Free, Bessie Coleman, the first African-American woman to earn a pilot's license. In an era when aviation schools in the United States flat out refused to teach a black woman to fly, she went to France to learn. And she came back and flew. These are American stories. Wild, triumphant, heartbreaking human stories. And Sweet Blackberry has been putting them in front of children, in schools, on streaming, on HBO and Netflix since 2005. The narrators read like a Hollywood roll call. Hilary Woodard, Queen Latifah, Chris Rock, Misty Copeland. The films have won multiple awards, including the Parents' Choice Award. They've been featured on HBO Family and Netflix. Karyn has personally visited schools across the country, screening the films and talking directly to kids. She didn't wait for Hollywood to tell these stories. She built the platform herself. And she didn't stop at film. In 2019, Karyn published How High the Moon, a middle-grade novel, her debut book for young readers. It's a deeply personal work, loosely inspired by her own mother's childhood growing up in the Jim Crow South. A story about identity, heritage, and the lengths people go to just to belong somewhere. The book was critically acclaimed. In 2020, she published Flying Free, a picture book biography of Bessie Coleman, illustrated by R. Gregory Christie, the same illustrator who had been with Sweet Blackberry since nearly the beginning. In 2021, Saving the Day, the story of Garrett Morgan, now in picture book form for the youngest readers. And in 2023, she released Clouds Over California, a semi-autobiographical work that drew directly from her own life. Her debut YA novel, Blue Beach, is scheduled for publication in the summer of 2026. This is not a side hustle. This is a body of work. Now, she hasn't completely vanished from the world she came from. In 2020, nearly 25 years after The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air ended, the cast reunited for a special reunion on HBO Max. Will Smith, Alfonso Ribeiro, Tatiana Ali, DJ Jazzy Jeff, and Karyn Parsons. She showed up. She laughed. She cried. They all did. That reunion happened in the shadow of grief. James Avery, Uncle Phil, had passed away in December 2013, and his absence was felt by everyone on that stage. Karyn has spoken about how much Avery influenced her, how he was a historian in his own right, passionate about exactly the kind of stories she now dedicates her life to telling. "A lot of what I do," she said, "came from James." That's a beautiful full circle. The man who played her father on television helped plant the seed for the work she'd do long after the cameras stopped rolling. So let's go back to the question that started all of this. Why did Karyn Parsons disappear? The honest answer is, she didn't disappear. Hollywood disappeared on her. And instead of chasing it, she built something better. She faced typecasting that limited what roles were offered to her. She faced the cancellation cycle that eats up good shows and talented people without apology. She chose motherhood and presence over the chaos of the audition circuit. And she found a calling that was bigger than any sitcom, any film, any red carpet. She decided that telling the truth about history to children was more important than playing a character someone else wrote. And here's what's remarkable. A woman who became famous for playing someone shallow and self-absorbed has spent the last 2 decades doing the exact opposite, building something with depth, something that lasts, something that matters. Karyn Parsons didn't disappear. She transformed. If you grew up watching The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, you owe it to yourself to look up Sweet Blackberry. Watch the films. Share them with kids in your life. Read her books, because Hilary Banks was a great character. But Karyn Parsons? Karyn Parsons is the real story. If this video moved you, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. These are the kinds of stories that deserve to be seen. We'll see you in the next one.